I found out my husband cheated with my boss, and I quietly stole my happiness. My 33F husband D, 35M, and I've been together for 9 years, married for 6, and up until a few months ago I would have described our relationship as comfortable but due for a tune-up. You know, routine arguments about dishes, chores, and his very dramatic tendencies. "I can't possibly fold laundry tonight, my skin is too sensitive," was an actual quote. But somewhere around early spring, things shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way that would set off alarm bells for most people, but enough that I felt that weird little knot in my stomach. The kind you get before you realize the roller coaster is much bigger than it looked from the ground. He suddenly had opinions about my outfits, like he was on some internal fashion police committee I never hired him for. He also became obsessed with work-life separation, which for him meant hiding his phone under the pillow, like a Victorian lady concealing forbidden letters. Still, I brushed it off. Everyone gets weird sometimes. Work had been stressful, especially with my boss L, 40F, who is gorgeous, terrifying, and the type of woman who makes you want to apologize when she walks into a room even if you've done nothing wrong. I just didn't know yet that both of them, the boss I admired and the husband I loved, were about to turn my life inside out. The first real crack in the facade happened on a random Tuesday. I came home early because Elle canceled our one-on-one last minute, claiming a personal emergency. Totally normal. Happens. What wasn't normal was walking into my house and finding D in the kitchen looking like he had seen a ghost, or maybe become one. Pale, jittery, sweaty in that guilty way where you don't know if he's about to confess to murder or claim he just did an intense workout, which he absolutely did not. He kept asking why I was home. Not in the "oh yay you're early" way, but in the "why have you betrayed the schedule" way. His phone kept lighting up. He kept flipping it face down like it was flashing nuclear codes. I tried to ask if everything was okay, and he launched into this long, bizarre explanation about how he had a migraine that manifested emotionally. I didn't even know migraines could do that, but at the time I just nodded. The whole evening felt off. Wrong. Like the air in the house had changed density. But still, I told myself I was overthinking. After all, Elle had a personal emergency. D was being weird. Sometimes people are just weird. I had no idea how tightly the two were connected. About a week after that bizarre Tuesday, I finally got the confirmation my gut had been begging me to acknowledge. I was at work, staying late to finish a report Elle had been hounding me about. She'd been weird too, canceling meetings, snapping at people, disappearing for long stretches. I assumed stress. I assumed anything except what it actually was. I went to drop something off in her office since she'd stepped out for a call. Her laptop was open on her desk, screen dark. I didn't even touch it, just set the folder down and turned to leave. Except as I turned, my elbow tapped her mouse, and the screen woke up. And there it was. A message thread. Opened, live, right in front of me, between her and someone saved as D. Redheart. My stomach dropped so hard I swear I heard a thud. I told myself it couldn't be my D. Different Ds exist. D is not an uncommon initial. Maybe it was someone else with the same first letter and the same habit of using way too many heart emojis. But then I saw the most recent message. From him. Sent literally 5 minutes earlier. "I missed the way you grabbed me this morning. Wish she didn't come home early last week. Could have stayed longer." I froze. Literally couldn't breathe. My boss. My husband. My house. My schedule being analyzed like a damn security breach. I backed out of her office quietly, like I was leaving a crime scene, because in a way, I was. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't break anything. I just walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and let the silence wrap around me like a straitjacket. Somehow, that hurt more. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. My brain was soup, my heart was glass dust, and I needed to see whether he'd lie to my face without flinching. Spoiler, he would. Like a champion. When I got home, he was on the couch scrolling on his phone like he hadn't been sexting my boss between meetings. He looked up and gave me this half smile, the one he uses when he wants to seem innocent but mostly just looks constipated. I sat down. Calm. Too calm. "D," I said, "I went into Elle's office today." He froze just a fraction, just enough that if I hadn't known, I might have missed it. Then he launched into the most unhinged improv performance of his life. "Oh, weird. That's weird. Why were you in there? I mean, not that you can't be in there, it's just, boundaries? Office boundaries? She's very professional and private. Super private. Like, extremely private." I watched him melt down in real time. It was almost impressive. So I pushed. "You talked to her today?" He blinked, then shook his head so fast I thought it might unscrew. "What? No. I mean, yes. Wait, no. Just work stuff. She's been sending a lot of memos. So many memos. God, she loves memos." "A memo." He said memo. Like it was 1987, and they were passing notes in a law firm drama. I finally hit him with it. "I saw your messages." The man went still. Completely still. Like a deer in headlights, but bitchier. Then came the excuses. The lies. The verbal gymnastics. "It's not what you think. We were just venting. You don't understand our connection." Every sentence contradicted the last one. It was like being trapped in a tornado made of excuses and self-pity. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even stand up. I just said, "I'm done." And I watched his face twist from fear to anger to, unbelievably, indignation, like I was the one ruining his day. Little did he know, the plot was about to twist harder than he ever could. After he finished his parade of contradictory excuses, he stormed off to the bedroom like he was the one who'd been wronged. Slammed the door. Classic D. Dramatic exit. Zero awareness. I sat there on the couch, staring at the wall, feeling every emotion crawl through me one by one. Shock, hurt, rage, numbness, disgust, more rage, a flicker of humiliation. Then more rage, because humiliation annoyed me. But the biggest thing was this weird, heavy clarity settling in my chest. It wasn't just the cheating. It was how easily he lied. How comfortable he was throwing me under the bus to protect himself. How he could betray me with someone I trusted and then act like I should be his therapist for the aftermath. I kept replaying the messages in my head. The little hearts. The timing. The way he panicked when I came home early that Tuesday. The way Elle canceled our meeting the same day. It all lined up like it had been choreographed. And while part of me wanted to scream or break something or torch his entire Funko Pop collection out of spite, another part of me just shut down. I realized I didn't even want answers. Not from him. Not from her. The betrayal hurt, yeah. But the clarity? Weirdly freeing. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't staying in this twisted little triangle they'd built behind my back. Something in me hardened that night. And something else, something very unexpected, was about to unravel next. The next morning, I went to work mostly because I refused to let either of them think they'd scared me off. I wasn't ready to talk to HR, or quit, or breathe the same air as Elle, but I needed to be in my own space, not trapped at home with Dee acting like a betrayed Victorian housewife. When I got there, Elle's husband, let's call him Mark, was in the lobby. Now, I'd only met Mark twice. He's one of those quietly beautiful men, soft eyes, annoyingly symmetrical face, the kind of jawline that makes you forgive people for things they haven't even done yet. He normally looks calm, but that morning, he looked wrecked, like he hadn't slept, like someone had taken a sledgehammer to his life. When he saw me, he stood up so fast the chair screeched. Can we talk? He asked. My stomach dropped. Not again. Not another revelation. Not another emotional ambush. But something in his expression told me he already knew. So we stepped outside, and he pulled out his phone with trembling hands. I think our spouses are having an affair, he said, voice cracking. Then he showed me his evidence. Screenshots from Elle's iCloud backup. Messages, photos, locations. Stuff I hadn't even seen. Stuff I didn't even want to imagine. It felt like someone was pouring ice water down my spine. But here's the thing. Instead of crying or panicking, I suddenly felt this strange, grounding presence beside me, him. Mark wasn't loud or dramatic like Dee. He wasn't cold or smug like Elle. He was just hurt. Honest. Raw. And somehow, that made everything hit differently. We ended up sitting in his car for 2 hours, talking, comparing timelines, filling in gaps. It was the first time since discovering the affair that I didn't feel completely insane. And somewhere between the grief and the disbelief, something else sparked, a quiet understanding. A kind of emotional solidarity I didn't expect. I wasn't thinking romantically. Not then. But for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel alone. And that feeling? It was about to change everything. After those 2 hours in Mark's car, something strange happened. Not dramatic, not romantic, just human. We both sat there staring at the dashboard like it held the answers to why our spouses had the emotional maturity of wet cardboard. I finally muttered, I feel stupid. He shook his head immediately. You're not stupid. They are. The certainty in his voice hit me so hard, I almost cried again. Nobody had said that to me yet. Everyone else, well, Dee, made it sound like maybe I deserved it. That I drove him to cheating by, I don't know, breathing wrong? Mark ran a hand through his hair. I thought she was pulling away because of stress. I even suggested we take a vacation to reconnect. He let out a laugh that was more of a broken exhale. She told me she didn't have time. I snorted. She had time, just not for you. He gave a sad little smile. Same with your husband. And there it was, shared pain morphing into shared sarcasm. We kept talking, not about the cheating anymore, but about normal things. Movies. Our jobs. The stupid things Elle and Dee both did that annoyed us in hindsight. Every little revelation felt like peeling back layers of fog in my brain. There was no flirting. No dashing. Nothing inappropriate. But there was a sudden, deeply unfair thought that popped into my head. How did Elle cheat on this man? Because unlike my husband, who at that very moment was probably rehearsing a dramatic monologue in the mirror, Mark was grounded, sincere, and had an actual functioning moral compass. By the time I finally went back into the office, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not fine. But steadier. I didn't know yet that this connection, this quiet, accidental alliance, would become the very thing that flipped the entire situation upside down. But the universe knew. And the universe was about to get messy. I got home that night fully prepared to avoid Dee until I gathered enough strength to tell him I wanted a separation. My plan was quiet, strategic, dignified. His plan? Apparently to greet me at the door like he was auditioning for the role of victim number 1 on a melodramatic soap opera. He stood there with his arms crossed, hips tilted, giving me that "you ruined my life" expression he usually saved for when I forgot to buy his preferred brand of almond milk. Where were you all day? He demanded. Not worried. Not gentle. Interrogating. I was at work, I said, moving past him. He followed me like a yappy chihuahua with insecurity issues. No, you weren't. I called. You didn't answer. I texted. Nothing. Are you avoiding me? I turned to him. Dee, I found out you cheated on me. Yes. I'm avoiding you. He rolled his eyes. Rolled his eyes. As if I had just accused him of using the wrong laundry detergent, not detonating our marriage. Oh my God, he groaned. Are you still on that? I told you it wasn't serious. Why are you blowing this out of proportion? I stared at him. You slept with my boss. It was one time. It was multiple times. Okay, well, I didn't enjoy it. I blinked slowly. That literally doesn't make it better. Then, because the bitchiness in this man is Olympic level, he tried a new angle. You know what? I think you want to leave me. I think you're using this as an excuse because you're bored, or going through a phase, or whatever women do when they... I cut him off. Stop talking. But he didn't. Oh no. He kept going. He accused me of being dramatic, cold, too logical, not affectionate enough, not spontaneous, and, my personal favorite, too independent. Like that was some kind of flaw. It was surreal. He was spiraling. Not with guilt. No, he was spiraling because the spotlight was no longer on him. The irony? While he was mid-rant, his phone buzzed with a message from Elle. A preview popped up on the lock screen. We need to talk. He knows. He scrambled to hide it, but he was too slow, and for the first time since this all began, I laughed. Actually laughed. Because suddenly everything was so clear. He wasn't devastated about losing me. He was panicking about losing his messy little affair. And right then, deep in my bones, I knew. This marriage was done. But the story? Oh, it was just getting started. The day after Dee's tantrum, something inside me snapped into alignment. Not broken, aligned. Like all the chaos had settled into one perfectly clear direction. I was done being the one who got blindsided. Now it was my turn to steer the ship. First thing I did was call in sick, not to avoid work, but to avoid seeing Elle before HR handled her. I needed distance from her plastic sympathy face. Besides, I'd already forwarded the screenshots Mark gave me to my personal email. I wasn't going into that office unarmed.
D?
He was still sulking around the house like a Victorian ghost haunting its own poor decisions. He kept giving me these long, wounded looks, hoping I'd approach him. I didn't. He finally cornered me in the kitchen with, "So, what's your plan? Are you going to keep punishing me?" "My plan," I said, calmly buttering toast, "is to leave you." You'd think I slapped him with a live fish. His jaw dropped so far he could have swallowed the toaster.
What?
"You can't just leave. We're married."
Yes.
"And you cheated. That doesn't mean you get to just quit." I stared at him. "That's literally what it means." He sputtered. "So you're just gonna give up? Throw everything away? Destroy our lives?" As if he hadn't already done exactly that with his pants around his ankles. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Silence says more than any speech. And that silence? It rattled him. He stomped away like a toddler denied a cookie. But while he was pacing around rehearsing his next dramatic monologue, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "If you need anything today, let me know. I'm around." Simple.
Kind. Direct.
And suddenly I realized something wild. While Dee was acting like I'd wronged him, Mark was the only person actually checking if I was okay. That's when the idea, the one I never expected, never planned, never even imagined, began to form. Not revenge. Not rebound. But possibility. I hadn't stolen Mark.
No.
He had been abandoned, just like me. But if Dee and Elle thought they could blow up 2 marriages and walk away untouched, they were about to learn what consequences really look like. Later that afternoon, after hours of Dee stomping around performing his sad little boy routine, I decided I needed air. I grabbed my keys without saying a word. Of course, that triggered him. "Where are you going?"
Out.
"With who?" "My sanity." He made a strangled noise like a car failing to start, but I walked out anyway. I drove aimlessly for a bit until I somehow ended up parked in front of a small cafe. My phone buzzed again. "Mark, are you okay?" It's wild how 2 simple sentences, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" can feel like a lifeline when your spouse can't manage a single ounce of empathy. I told him I was fine, just out clearing my head. He replied that he was nearby if I wanted company. There was no pressure, no weird vibe. And honestly, I didn't want to be alone. So I said yes. He showed up 10 minutes later, and the moment he slid into the seat across from me, I felt this wave of relief. Not attraction, not tension, just the comfort of someone who was navigating the same hellscape I was. We talked for hours. Not about Elle and Dee, at least not after the first few minutes. We talked about childhood memories, food we hated, our favorite stupid TV shows. He told me about the woodworking hobby he picked up during lockdown. I told him about the garden I kept killing and replanting like some kind of botanical Groundhog Day. We laughed. Actually laughed. And it felt so unfair. How easy it was to be around him. How natural it felt to exist with someone who wasn't performing. How quickly safety can bloom in the ruins of betrayal. At one point, he paused mid-sip of his coffee and said, "I don't get it." "Get what?" I asked. "How someone could look at you and still choose to hurt you." I didn't blush. No, it was deeper than that. It hit somewhere sore and neglected inside me. Somewhere Dee hadn't touched emotionally in years. But I didn't flirt back. I didn't lean in. I didn't cross any line. We were 2 broken people sharing oxygen. Nothing more. When we finally stood to leave, he hesitated and said, "If you ever need anything at all, call me." And I believed him. Not because I was falling for him, but because he meant it. And that realization, knowing there was someone out there who genuinely cared, was the first time I felt something like hope.
Meanwhile, back home?
Dee had no idea his entire narrative was slipping out of his control, and that was about to become his worst nightmare. Over the next few days, I started making moves. Not dramatic moves. Not confrontational ones. Just deliberate, quiet steps toward taking my life back. I cleaned out our shared bank account, calmly, like a corporate audit. I shifted my work schedule so I could actually breathe instead of tiptoeing around Dee's chaos. and I started talking to Mark more, texting, laughing, venting. He was patient, never pushy, always steady. D, meanwhile, was doing what he does best, lying to himself. "You're overreacting." She didn't mean anything. I only made one mistake. And when confronted, he doubled down with his usual charm offensive, dramatic sighs, fake tears, guilt-tripping about how he lost the best thing in his life because I wasn't supportive enough. I listened, nodded, and let him talk himself into a deeper hole. The turning point came when he tried to guilt me into staying home for dinner, a desperate attempt to reclaim control. I smiled. "Actually, I'm meeting someone tonight." The color drained from his face. Someone? I didn't explain. I just walked out the door. I didn't realize it at the time, but in that moment, I was quietly stealing something he could never reclaim. My choice. My freedom. My happiness. And Mark? He was waiting.
Calm. Patient.
Reliable. Everything D wasn't. As I slid into the passenger seat, D was left behind, sputtering to himself, realizing too late that he didn't just lose control, he had already lost me. And I hadn't even kissed anyone yet. After that night, I started to notice just how fragile D really was. Not emotionally fragile, like he cried in the corner, but fragile in the way that only cheaters who get caught can be. Fragile in confidence, in ego, in authority over any part of my life. He tried all the usual tactics, dramatic apologies, desperate gifts, last-minute promises of therapy, vague threats about how embarrassed you'll be if you leave. I listened, nodded, and responded with the calmest voice I could muster. D, you made your choice. I'm making mine. The look on his face? Priceless. Part disbelief, part panic, part indignation. It was like he had just discovered gravity, doesn't care about him personally. And the best part? Mark and I were slowly building our own little bubble of normalcy. Not romance yet, just sanity, laughter, late-night text conversations, and someone who actually respected me. D tried to intervene a few times, calling me, leaving passive-aggressive texts, showing up uninvited. I ignored them all. He begged. He pleaded. He lied again, trying to convince me he'd changed. I watched it all unfold quietly from the other side of the battlefield, sipping coffee while my husband, my actual husband, lost his power over me. And let me tell you, nothing feels better than quietly reclaiming your life while someone else realizes their entire world was built on sand. By the end of the week, D was a mess. Friends noticed. I barely cared, because for the first time in years, I felt untouchable. Not because I was perfect, but because I finally chose me. A few weeks into this new rhythm, Mark and I started spending more time together, not in a forced, rebound way, but naturally. Coffee, long walks, talking about everything and nothing. And slowly, that trust and shared understanding began to shift into something deeper. One evening, after a particularly long walk, we found ourselves on a quiet park bench, the kind where the streetlights cast soft glows and the world feels like it's paused just for you. We were laughing about some ridiculous office mishap when I noticed how close he was sitting. Not aggressively, not romantically, but close enough that I felt safe. Really safe. And then, without thinking, he brushed a strand of hair from my face. His hand lingered, and in that tiny, gentle gesture, I felt something. Something I hadn't felt with D in years. Warmth, care, and the subtle, thrilling possibility of love built on honesty instead of betrayal. I didn't pull away, and neither did he. It was small. It was quiet. It was perfect. Meanwhile, back at home, D was spiraling. He found out through some mutual friends that I'd been seen with Mark. The texts I ignored were no longer ignored. They were angry, frantic, pathetic attempts at control. But by this point, I was untouchable. I had my life back. And I realized something crucial. I wasn't just walking away from D anymore. I was walking towards something real, something worth trusting, something worth laughing for again. It was liberating. And secretly maybe a little delicious. Because while he had tried to break me, I was quietly building a better life on the ruins he'd left behind. By now, D had officially hit peak meltdown mode. His texts were manic, his calls nonstop, and his attempts to manipulate me into guilt trips were, honestly, kind of laughable. He was pacing, panicking, performing, lying, crying, all at the same time. I watched it happen like a front-row spectator at a tragicomic show. Meanwhile, Mark and I had created our own quiet little world. Weekend brunches, late-night walks, stupid inside jokes. He never pushed, never rushed, never made me feel like I owed him anything. And slowly, very quietly, he became the steady presence D never could be. Then came the day I realized I didn't even feel anger toward D anymore. Sure, the memory of betrayal stung, but it wasn't ruling me. The fear? Gone. The heartbreak? Mostly healed. All that remained was clarity. I thought about L2, and the thought made me smile in a way I hadn't in months. They both thought they had power. Both thought they could lie and manipulate and keep me tethered. But I had quietly stolen something far more precious than an affair. They didn't see it coming. I had stolen my own happiness, my own peace, my own freedom. And in doing so, I'd taken my husband back from the ruins. Because here's the kicker. The beautiful husband I stole wasn't D. It was Mark. The man who actually deserved me. The man who made me feel safe, valued, and unafraid to laugh again. D was left with his lies, his bitterness, and his own reflection. And honestly, that's exactly where he belongs. Looking back now, it all feels surreal. Betrayal like that changes you, but not always in the ways you expect. D thought he could lie, manipulate, and guilt-trip his way out of consequences. L thought she could seduce, without repercussions. And I thought I might break. But I didn't. I learned that strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's calm. It's the decision to take back your life while everyone else is too busy performing their own drama to notice. I learned that love built on honesty and respect, like the one slowly growing between Mark and me, is worth more than any fantasy you once believed in with a liar. Most importantly, I learned that revenge doesn't have to be messy to be sweet. I didn't yell, I didn't throw things, I didn't announce my triumph. I quietly reclaimed what was mine. My peace, my choices, my future. And in that quiet reclamation, I stole something far more precious than an affair. I stole my happiness. So, to anyone out there who suspects betrayal, who's living with a partner who lies and manipulates, here's my advice. Trust your instincts. That little knot in your stomach is usually right. Protect your peace first. Don't get trapped in chaos that isn't yours. Build your support, friends, allies, or someone like Mark who reminds you there's still decency in the world. Take your life back quietly. The best revenge isn't drama. It's living well, happily, freely. He's irrelevant now.
Same.
But me? I'm alive, laughing, and for the first time in years, untouchable. And that is sweeter than anything they could have taken from me.